The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 125.
Oh man, Euchre's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long con from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked to send over in. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter hands up. Carter's down. Oh my God! Carter scored. Look at those Wolverines. 95 Wolverines going in the end zone. Carter's on the pass. In the air, it's done. Buford is going out of his mind. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Sloppy play offensively overshadowed defensive improvement in the Wolverines' 13-6 loss on Saturday night to Notre Dame. On today's Michigan Rewind, we'll review the good and the bad from the disappointing loss to the Irish with Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com. Before we check in with Michael, let's start, as we always do, with our view from Section 17, some of my random thoughts on the game. What was the biggest turning point? Well, to me it was the tailback pass from Vincent Smith that he threw for an interception in the first quarter. Drew Dillio was wide open, but Smith felt pressure and he shot-putted the ball, which went behind Dillio. The interception climaxed an 11-play, 78-yard drive by the Wolverines, who seemed really to be gaining traction against what was a ferocious Notre Dame defense. It was a gimmick play, and that call backfired in a big way. Denard's 5 turnovers. He rarely tucks the ball and runs this season when his receivers are covered. I think we're all seeing that. Instead, he has been trying to, once again, force the pass into coverage. Most of those interceptions could have been avoided if he would have thrown the ball into the stands or just taken a sack. Live to fight another day. Denard addressed that very fact after the game, and he knows he has to drastically improve that piece of his game. The offensive line. I thought we started off shaky, but in the second half really did take control against a very good Notre Dame front. There were nice creases for Fitz, and Denard did have better protection as the game wore on. Despite the 6 turnovers, we still had a chance to win this game right up until that last Notre Dame drive. The defense, which had played so well all night, especially considering the bad situations they were continually put in by the offense, just could not get the one stop they needed. But what we saw from the D was encouraging, and it does need to continue. We all know that when you cough the ball up, especially 6 times, you will rarely win the game. So it was really a maddening game to watch from an offensive perspective, but encouraging from a defensive point of view. Coming up next on Michigan Rewind, we'll get the thoughts of Michael Rothstein, who covers Michigan for WolverineNation, ESPN.com. That's right here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Rewind segment today, Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com, to take a look back at that big loss Saturday night in South Bend. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, one thing we knew, Michael, heading into the season was that Denard had to cut down on the picks. We heard it in the spring. We heard it in the summer. He's, working on the footwork, has to cut down on those picks if the offense is going to be consistent. So Saturday night was an absolute disaster in that regard, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And Denard Robinson admitted to it pretty much 20 minutes after the game was over. He called it worst game of his career, most disappointed he's been in his 22 years of life. And obviously, Saturday was his 22nd birthday, so that's probably the worst birthday gift he could have gotten. And you look at it, and it wasn't so much that he threw the interceptions, but it was how they happened. It was actually 5 consecutive passes that Michigan threw were intercepted. The first one was Vincent Smith's halfback pass that was picked off in the end zone, and then 4 straight passes from Denard were all intercepted. But maybe the most concerning thing there were some of the reads, and I haven't gone back and watched all the film yet, so I haven't really been able to see exactly what happened, but at least 2 of them looked like they were clearly his fault. Thereis one hit Manti Te'o right in his number 5, and the other one basically went right to 2 Notre Dame defenders. That's the 3rd time this season, at least the one where it hit him Te'o right in the numbers, that he basically threw an interception right in their receiver's numbers. So either someone horribly misran a route, or that was a very, very bad read by Robinson. Some of that had to do with pressure, but again, all of it goes back to what you were saying, which is decision-making. And that is still an issue for him. He said that he's still trying to force passes, and he's been doing that frankly, since he arrived on campus.
Yeah, I thought through the last 2 games, maybe we've seen what Coach Borges and Coach Hoke were talking about in the spring and the summer, that they are seeing the progression there, that he's making better reads, not throwing off the back foot as much, but it was almost like a revert last night, that everything he could possibly do wrong he was doing.
Oh, absolutely. And while he'll never say that one thing compounded on another, I think most people would agree that, human nature is, when something like that happens, and it happens twice and then 3 times, it gets stuck in your head whether you want to admit it or not. I mean, that's just the way the human brain seems to work in 99.9% of individuals, I guess. But it was one of those things of, it reminded me very much in some ways of his freshman year, where when you were watching him as a freshman and he was driving down the field, there was this sense of something's going to happen and it's not going to be good for Michigan. If you go back to the Iowa game his freshman year, which showed, in some ways, it really kind of showed the dichotomy of his career, because he had that first drive where he came in relief of Forcier, where he led the team down the field to a touchdown and brought them, really close to winning a game that they probably had very little business of being in. And then he's out there again for the final drive of the game, and he throws a pick under pressure. So, you look back to that, and then you look and say Saturday night, and sometimes it was really right there, too. Now, granted, Denard Robinson can take the brunt of a lot of this, but it goes on the offense, too. He was pressured, at least on one of the interceptions. Te'o had, a wide-open shot at him and basically hit him really hard. And, he was under duress, and Notre Dame's defense did a great job of containing him. They really did. They basically wouldn't let him run. And if you look back at it, how many times did he really get outside and really get in a gear that most Michigan fans have seen? 2, 3 times the entire game?
Yeah.
Not many teams outside of Alabama have been able to do that. And when I asked Notre Dame defenders after the game whether they took, from what they saw in the Alabama film, none of them really copped to it. Most of them saying, they didn't really know where the coaches got the game plan from and all of that other stuff. But if you watched that game, you saw at least shades of what Alabama did and what Notre Dame ended up doing. That said, I don't know if there's another front 7 that Michigan's going to play this year that can really do that. Maybe Michigan State, maybe Ohio State. Other than that, I think that they probably faced the 2 toughest defenses they're going to face all year in September. And that's something I think that might be lost on a lot of people, is that they probably faced 2 top 10 defenses, whether the stats bear that out or not. But as far as talent goes, 2 top 10 defenses within the first month of the season.
Yeah, and Michael, the Notre Dame folks that I talked to last week, Lou Simoji being one of them, the editor down at Blue and Gold Illustrated, he was saying that this is probably the best front seven that Notre Dame's had in the last 20 years. Did it appear to you that, Coach Borges knew that we're going to struggle up front with these guys, not only tackle to tackle, but trying to get Denard going in the running game, so we're going to attack the one weak link that they have, which is that secondary, and that just blew up on us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I said before the game I thought that was going to be their strategy going in because it's what their strategy was against Alabama. And Notre Dame's secondary is much weaker, per se, than Alabama's. So you look at it, and that's really, I think, what they really tried to do. They also threw a lot more trickery in there than they've done, really all season, and maybe the entirety of Borges being in Ann Arbor, just you had the wide receiver pass on the second or third play of the game. That if the ball's thrown a little bit better, Joey Carriage has a wide open play. And then you have the halfback pass. And they were running a little bit more. They ran end-arounds with Jeremy Gallen. I don't really remember them ever running an end-around last season. So they were certainly trying to open up more of the playbook. It's just that besides maybe those end-arounds to Gallen, it didn't really work. And that's the problem. If you run it one time and it doesn't work, you're probably not going to run it again, at least not in that game.
Well, as good as that Notre Dame defensive front is, did you think the offensive line play overall was pretty darn good?
Yeah, no. I thought the first half Michigan's offensive line play wasn't that good. It really wasn't. Denard was getting pressured. Toussaint had 4 rushes for, I think, 2 yards in the first half. And, I mean, that's just not going to get it done. That's just not productive. Fitzgerald Toussaint, 4 carries, 2 yards. Jeremy Gallen had 1 carry for 8 yards. So, I mean, that tells you exactly right there that they weren't really able to get that pressure up front. Second half, I thought they did a pretty good job. Toussaint had holes for the first time all year. He probably bigger holes than he even had against UMass when he was running in between the tackles. And that's a sign of progress. Taylor Lewan did not necessarily take too kindly to being asked about their struggles in the first half, but he pointed out immediately, you look at the second half, and yeah, the second half was a lot better. Denard had, I think, more time to throw the ball in the second half, too. And so whatever adjustment they made worked. And that's maybe a building block for them going forward because, again, like I said, they're not going to face another defensive front like this, at least until Michigan State, and maybe not the rest of the season.
Well, the defense, Michael, turned in, I thought, overall a surprising effort last night. I thought going into the game that was our biggest concern. We thought the offense would, find ways to move the ball and score. But the defense, pretty darn good. What did you think of the performance?
Oh, best performance of the season, and it wasn't even close. The front seven really impressed me. I thought that was going to be a major, major problem for Michigan last night. I actually thought that was probably where the Wolverines were going to lose the game, was Sierra Wood, Theo Riddick really just kind of being able to run all over him. Everett Golson, I didn't anticipate him getting pulled, obviously. I thought that was just going to be a nightmare for them because they had struggled on getting to the edge against Air Force. They had struggled against Mike Cox, who was no better than a 4th-string running back at Michigan while he was there. They obviously struggled against Alabama, whose offensive line was superior to anyone they're going to face, and their offensive line is pretty experienced. So there was many reasons to think they wouldn't hold up well. They did. Jake Ryan is turning into Michigan's best defender and most consistent player. Desmond Morgan, he may not be the most athletic player in the world, but he's very instinctual, and he's still just a sophomore and really just kind of learning. His first start was in this Notre Dame game last year. So I think you have a lot of promise there, and obviously the freshmen, Bolden and Ross, neither one saw a ton of time. Bolden saw a good amount of time, but didn't make any plays, really. So I think you got to be encouraged there if you are a Michigan fan. Their secondary picked off a couple passes, looked a lot better, save for maybe that final drive. But I think at that point they were just really, sitting on the run. They didn't expect Eifert to be running down the field. But that was the only catch Eifert had all night. And Eifert's an All-American and possible first-round draft pick in next April's NFL draft. So I think they did a good job, and the defensive line really kind of held their own. They didn't get any sacks, but they did enough to not let Sierra Wood or Theo Riddick beat them. And that's, I think, all you could really ask for now. Now you take that and you have 2 weeks to build on that and try to figure out a way not only to do that, but to get pressure. They're never going to be like the defensive line of last year because they don't have a third-round NFL draft pick who's, already has a sack in the NFL and at least one tackle for loss, because they just don't have that guy. But they can be good enough to get pressure, and that's something that I think 2 weeks ago maybe you didn't even think.
Any other positives you can think that Michigan can take away from that game?
Dennis Norfleet continues to really seem to pick up the kick return game. I know that sounds maybe a little bit silly, but again, he's a freshman. This is his fourth game returning kicks, and he seems each time to be kind of understanding the wedge more and understanding maybe where to cut and all that. And he's going to break one at one point this year. I don't know which game, but it's going to happen. I'd be surprised if he goes the whole year without a kick return, if not for a touchdown, at least inside the opponent's 20-yard line. I think that's going to happen. I just don't know when. Could be in 2 weeks, could be in a month. It's going to happen. And, they didn't punt. They punted once, which was a Matt Wild pooch punt. They didn't punt, but granted, that's a lot because there were turnovers everywhere, so that you can't really take that as a positive. But I think you really if you're Michigan, you hang your hat on the defense, and you hang your hat on that. You were moving the ball at least. There wasn't this stalemate like against Alabama where it was 2-3 big plays, and other than that, you didn't move the ball. You moved the ball against Notre Dame. You just then turned the ball over. So you take some solace in that, and also that probably not going to face a defense like that the rest of the way. Offensively, you'll probably face a couple offenses that are better, but the Big Ten's extremely mediocre. So you can still go out and win the Big Ten and get to the Rose Bowl, which is Brady Hoke's goal anyway. So I think that's what you take from it. And the other thing that you take from it, once you lost to Alabama, you weren't going to be in the national title picture regardless. It just wasn't going to happen. There were too many good teams, and that was the chance at the marquee win that they really need. So this loss was just really a loss, and it didn't really affect a lot. That would be the positive spin if you like Michigan. That's how I would tell a Michigan fan to approach it.
We looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season. If you were being really honest in scouting these teams, a lot of us would have said 2-2 is about where we expected to be going into the bye week. As you said, the Big Ten is mediocre at best this year. There is still a lot for this team to gain. And as you said, if you look at the positives we take away from Saturday night, the defense playing better than we had thought, and the offense moving the ball, just making a lot of mistakes. If you can start to eliminate that, it still could be a really interesting Big Ten season for the Wolverines.
Oh, absolutely. There is no reason that they could. There's no way you can see them winning or losing. Well, let me rephrase that. They can win every game left on their schedule. They can also lose pretty much almost any game left on their schedule. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It just means that there's a lot of toss-up games now because the question, I think, now for Michigan is, are they a team that's severely flawed, or are they a team that happen to run into two of the best 5 teams in the country and they're just not at that level? I'm not saying, by the way, Notre Dame is one of the top 5 teams in the country. I think that's going to bear itself out one way or the other. But I think the answer to that question of what Michigan really is lies somewhere in the middle. I think they're a team with flaws, but they're not a team with gaping holes. I think they're a team that's going to be much better in the Big Ten than they looked in their first or last non-conference game. They're just going to be, because if they don't, it's going to be a long year, and they're going to be out of the race pretty quickly. Because if there's one team that has a defensive line and a defense that could pose problems early, I think it's Purdue. Their defensive line is really good. Kawan Short is an NFL player, and the rest of his teammates on the line are also very good. Ricardo Allen's back there, and they have a better secondary than Notre Dame does, frankly. So it'll be an interesting test, and I think it's a good test for them to have early, because if they can win that game, especially on the road, I think that gives them a lot of confidence the rest of the way when they have to still go to Nebraska and go to Ohio State.
Well, you're right. They're going to have to scratch and claw, find ways to win in just about every game. There is not one gimme on the schedule.
Absolutely. That Purdue game, it's so cliche, and I never say it, but the next game on the schedule is the most important. You'll hear every coach and every player say that. But when you look at this season, now granted, obviously, win over Ohio State, win over Michigan State in the eyes of many fans makes it, a successful season. But in reality, for them to have a successful season, everything hinges on Purdue. Because if they lose to Purdue, then all of a sudden maybe the confidence wanes a little bit because they've lost now 3 of 5. They've lost 2 in a row. So I think that, you look at that game, and that's a huge game for them, for confidence and just to show that, yes, they can. If they can beat Purdue pretty handily, then I think that shows them that, yes, they can beat a good team. Because Purdue's a good team. This is probably Danny Hope's best team. Purdue is a good team. And it'll be interesting to see how Michigan comes out. I'm really, really curious to see how they come out after a bye.
Well, we have a week, or I should say they have a week to get ready. I think you're right. That is the big hinge game now for this team moving forward in the 2012 season. Our guest in the program today on our Michigan Rewind segment has been Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com. Michael, we've enjoyed having you with us to recap the Notre Dame game and hope to have you back on later in the season.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
That's Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com. Thanks to Michael for being our guest on Michigan Rewind today. Coming up next, Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, despite his offensive struggles, senior quarterback Denard Robinson accounted for 228 yards of total offense, 138 passing, 90 rushing against the Fighting Irish. Coming into the game, Robinson needed 191 yards to break the Michigan program record for career total offensive yardage, held by former quarterback Chad Henne, who gained 9,400 yards from 2004 through 2007. Robinson now has 9,438 yards of total offense in his career. Robinson also broke Henne's record for career interceptions, 37, with 4 against Notre Dame. Robinson now has thrown 38 in his career. Denard has now accounted for 3,670 yards on the ground in his career. The 90 yards he racked up against the Fighting Irish moved him into a tie for 5th place in all-time rushing yardage by a quarterback in NCAA history. Former West Virginia quarterback Pat White holds the all-time record with 4,480 yards. A win over the Wolverines has generally meant good things for the Fighting Irish. In the last 25 years, Notre Dame has finished with 9 or more wins 12 times. 7 of those seasons involved a win over Michigan. The Fighting Irish have won 9 or more games just once in the last 25 years when losing to Michigan. The Fighting Irish lost to Michigan 24-14 in 1991 and went on to win 10 games. Michigan now has a 23-16-1 all-time record against Notre Dame. Since the rivalry was renewed in 1978, the series has been knotted at 14-14-1. Sophomore cornerback Raymond Taylor notched his first career interception on Notre Dame's first offensive drive in the game. Redshirt junior safety Thomas Gordon tallied the second interception of his career. With 6 tackles against the Irish, 5th-year senior middle linebacker Kenny Demmons crossed the career 200-tackle plateau. He currently has 202. The Wolverines were held out of the end zone for the first time since the 2007 Ohio State game, which they lost 14-3. This marks the 6th time since the beginning of the 2009 season that Michigan failed to tally a rushing touchdown. This marked the 2nd time this season that the Michigan defense failed to tally a sack. The Wolverines did not sack Air Force quarterback Connor Dietz either. And finally, 5th-year senior safety Jordan Kovacs tied for the team lead with Desmond Morgan with 7 tackles. It was the first time this season in which Kovacs finished with the most tackles amongst Wolverines. He leads the team in tackles this season with 30. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Benefits include email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our always interesting message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, Whirls Wolverine, and our hockey guru Yoastmeister. The Monday Night Live chat takes place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so check it out. So join GBMW today and get your daily fix of Maize and Blue news and conversation. Then each Wednesday you can check out the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you are an Apple person, you'll find our app in the Lipson toolbox at the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give us a review. It really does help a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your comments. If you'd like to have your Maize and Blue opinion heard on an upcoming show, give us a call at 313-263-4842. Then leave an audio with your thoughts on this football season, the Notre Dame game, the Big Ten season, anything you like, the upcoming basketball season, hockey, recruiting, anything really that's on your mind. Just give us your name, where you're calling from, and then let it rip. If you'd rather send us an email, our address is themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. As always, I welcome your thoughts on anything Maize and Blue. Thanks again to our guest today, Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com. Don't forget to join us on Wednesday as we preview the Big Ten opener against a very good Purdue team. Until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!